these last days, the question's been asked, what is this place? Where are we when we're no longer bound, firstly, by those gunas, three, as the Hindus call them, that rajas, tamas and sattva, which is movement, inertia and balance, or those three levels of mind, which we've called the nitty-gritty, airy, fairy and transcendental, but which are really called existence, knowledge and bliss, or Satchitananda. The three levels of existence. But where are we? When, like Ram does in that story, we find ourselves outside Vishnu's mouth, no longer bound by the mind and its movements at whatever level. There's an old Sufi story that enables a question to be asked. And maybe in this new link that's unfolding for us, it might give us some gleaning of where this is. It's the story of a very rich merchant who lived in Samarkand during that time when Islam ruled the West. His great wealth had come partly from inheritance, partly from his own endeavors, and certainly with the assistance of a mentor who was, at that time, called the King of the West. He was a Sultan of Cordoba in Spain. And because the merchant's travels had taken him far and wide, he had met this king and come under his guidance. So this merchant had warehouses filled with spices and silks, ships that plied the seven seas and traded in all kinds of goods. His wealth was unbounded. But then disaster fell. A tyrant took over the land. Thieves came and raided his warehouses. Storms hit the seven seas and his ships were sunk. So many disasters, one after the other. But in the end, the merchant had lost everything. He was bereft. All that he could think that was left for him to do was to find his way back to his mentor, the Sultan of Cordoba. But Samarkand is a long way from Cordoba in Spain, so the journey was very long for someone who had nothing. But he set out on his donkey. But he hadn't gone very far when he was beset by bandits who stole his donkey, his clothing, and even the merchant himself into slavery. With great difficulty, he managed to extricate himself. Staggering across the desert, some Bedouins gave him something to wear and something to eat. But eventually, after many great hardships, he came to the city of Cordoba. But when he went to the palace gates to seek entry so that he could be in the presence of the king, because of his raggedness, his blackened face, the guards used the hilts of their swords to send him away. He managed with great difficulty to find himself a job as a porter, carrying the baggage of others, to make a few coins so that he could buy himself some decent clothing so that he could present himself to the Sultan. But even when he'd attained this and put on the garb, he was refused entry by the vizier. Over those years, he'd lost the way of the courtesies, the manners. He was rough. His language was rough. His face was rough. His clothing was rough. He was not given entry into the king's chamber. But the vizier undertook to send him to learn the protocols, to learn again the manners that were required. And after 3 years, he was finally admitted into the presence of the Sultan, who, as it happened, recognized him immediately, sat him down beside him, and asked him, the merchant, "How is life with you? What's been happening?" And the merchant told his tale of woe from beginning to end, how his country had been taken over by a tyrant, his ship sunk, his goods stolen, his slavery. After he'd finished his story to the Sultan turned to his vizier and said, "Give this man 100 sheep and let him be the chief shepherd on the side of the nearby mountain here." Now the merchant was, as one can imagine, greatly disappointed, expecting a greater largesse from his mentor, the Sultan. But what could he do? He had to accept what was given to him. So, donning the garb of a shepherd, he took his 100 sheep up to the side of the mountain. But after a very short while, a plague arrived, and one by one, the sheep died. Shamefacedly, he had to descend the mountain and present himself to the Sultan once again. And when he was asked, "How are the sheep?" he had to say what had happened. Again the Sultan turned to his vizier and said, "Give this man 50 sheep and let him return to the mountain." Now the merchant did not like his role as a shepherd. He was not comfortable with it. He didn't even like sheep. But he took his 50 sheep to the side of the mountain, and they began to graze on the green grass very happily. But then a pack of wild dogs came along attacked the sheep and chased them over a cliff. Again, with great shame, the merchant had to descend the mountain and present himself to the Sultan once again. The Sultan turned to his Grand Vizier and said, "Give this man 25 sheep. Let him return to the mountain." When the merchant returned to the mountain, the sheep happily grazed on the lush grass, and within a very short time, all the ewes gave birth to twins. So he had a flock of sheep. Their meat was good, their fleece was rich. He was able to go to the market and sell them. He bought more sheep, and when he took them back to the mountain, they very soon became fat and woolly on the rich grasses. He was able to build himself a house and buy himself some fine clothing. So he went down the mountain again into the presence of the Sultan. It was very obvious where he was at now. He had fine clothing. He had a flock of sheep. He had a residence. It was evident in his bearing. But still the Sultan asked him how it was with him. And the merchant was able to relate. "Ah," said the Sultan, "now the city of Seville is without a king, without a governor. I give you this kingdom." Now the merchant was greatly appreciated, but he could not help having the words come out of his mouth. "But why? Why, when I first came to you with my woes, did you not give me this city, this kingship?" The question that is given to you from this story is, what did the Sultan reply to the merchant in answer to this question? Why, when I came to you with my tale of woes, did you not give me a kingship? What did the Sultan say to the merchant in response to this question?
You had to earn it.
I don't know.
You had to earn it.
Yes?
He expected it.
No.
He wasn't in the right frame of mind.
It wasn't in the right frame of mind.
People are like sheep.
Frame the response. Put it into a sentence in using what it is that's come up for you. In this place as the Sultan, responding to this merchant. Put into a sentence this response. How would you put it to this man?
You have to be ready, and you have to be worthy.
So you would say, you have to prove ready, you have to prove worthy.
As you create your misery, so you create your how can you call it, your luck or your fortune.
Is it, though, in this story? We can presume he was a good man.
He had to maybe be, when he thought he was broken down, he wasn't quite broken down really, he had to be broken down more.
All right.
And perhaps he was ready, and so that's why he didn't give it to him straight away.
Yes.
So maybe that's what the Sultan said to him.
Right.
The having of it all and having it nothing are the flip side of the same coin. And he needed to learn to truly appreciate from a place that was less or not nothing,
Right.
beyond the cycle that he was in.
Mm-hmm. You remember, we're still asking this basic question. Where are we? What is this place in which we find ourselves when we are beyond the levels of mind? Looking at it from this place, would you frame your responses differently?
It should not matter if it's people or sheep what you're looking after.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or luck, good fortune or ill fortune, or
I like the answer someone gave about the expectation. To me, that's
absolutely, because expectation is of the mind, the movement of the mind. Where are we when we arrive at this place, when we're no longer bound by any of those levels? The movement of mind in relationship to desire. Yes?
And we can take everything in and let everything go through, whatever it is. We don't have to choose, we don't have to think.
Yes.
Probably the ultimate freedom too. The ultimate freedom.
Yes.
You just accept whatever happens when it comes, and you just flow with it.
Yes.
There's no resistance.
No. No resistance. Oh, phew, I'm not out of a drum.